Well, the vast majority of people heard of the Holocaust, the Jewish extermination by Nazis in World War II, but a lot of people have not heard of other extermination programs that were carried out by the Soviets, and this is called a Holodomor, which means extermination by hunger or hunger extermination, which happened in the Ukraine in 1932-1933. Per Stalin policy, actually, because, well, we'll get into why. Basically, it's the famine in the Soviet Ukraine, 1932 to 1933. Now, actually, today, I would think that, I'm not a Ukrainian or any kind of extract of Ukrainian or anywhere near there, but I'd be vehemently against any kind of encroachment by the Soviets or the Russians or whatever you want to call them today. I know a lot of people on the alternative media like to say it's Putin's backyard, but no. It's an independent country. It's called the Ukraine. Has its own language, its own customs. Also, Ukraine is the most fertile land in the world. It's the breadbasket of Europe. So why was there starvation back in 1932 and 33? But when the Ukrainians tried to assert independence from the USSR, the Bolsheviks, led by Stalin, who is not Jewish, by the way, for all you Jewish conspiracy theorists out there that love to make 50 million remarks and try to say some kind of way it's a Jewish conspiracy, but led by Stalin, exterminated them through hunger, because Stalin confiscated all the food, basically, 1932-33. An artificial famine was brutally enforced. About 10 million innocents and their animals starved to death. Even as word got out, America and the world did nothing to stop it. And actually, this is one of the reasons the Ukrainians welcomed the Nazis when they invaded Ukraine, because it was like the Soviets or the Nazis. You had your choice. And compared to what happened to them in the 30s, it was like a welcome invasion for the Ukrainians. And can you blame them under those circumstances? No, you can't, because of what happened to them. But this whole gray portion of the Ukraine was the main area where the genocide took place. Now, if you note today, where you look where there's most of this one area of Ukraine right here is one of the areas that they're talking about having to be a breakaway independent state that would be a Russian satellite today. Well, I'm going to state this. It's pretty obvious that a lot of native Ukrainians were basically killed off and replaced by other people that were basically colonists from Russia. And that's really what is going on. This is not Putin's backyard. This is an independent country. I know there's always a knee-jerk reaction about the Zionists, this and that. But, it's like you're watching a little bit too much of Russia Today and maybe some specifically Abigail Martin's remarks about one-way propaganda. But we need to actually look at what goes on in Russia and amongst the oligarchs, and basically how poor the average Russian even is under their thumb. But when you're actually dealing with a country that's not Russian, the oligarchs will pass out another country's goods, including essential foods, to Russians, and to hell with the people in that country. And they'll do that to any other country in the world, too, if they had the chance. But this was 6 million perished in Soviet famine. Actually, it's coming. This is from a Chicago American in the actual papers. Now, most of the time, the New York representatives that were in Ukraine, they reported back that there was no widespread famine, even though it was a total lie. Total lie. So this actually came from a Midwestern paper, the Chicago American. Peasants, crops seized, then their animals starved. This was the most fertile land in the world. So that's what happened. So now, if you're in an area that's not so fertile, can you imagine how it could be? This is a forgotten piece of history. So this is about as big as, or I don't know if it's even more so. Well, it depends on, I guess, as a percentage of population. But as far as sheer numbers, there's more Ukrainians that probably starved to death than even Jews did during the Holocaust. In the case of the Holocaust, they were flat out murdered by the Nazis. But evidence of widespread cannibalism was actually documented during the Holodomor, and it was like something that was absolutely needed to survive. So, actually, comes down to those who refused to steal or prostitute themselves died. And actually, some of this is going on right today in Ukraine. And this is where Femin is actually talking about a lot of things where women are being forced into prostitution because they absolutely have no means to support themselves, period. And that's why it's become a brothel where people are being exploited. In other words, they're not exactly willing sex workers. This is something that's been going on for quite some time because it's a pawn that's being swatted back and forth by the Russian bear. So the genocide question is undoubtedly not a question at all because it was per Stalin's orders and it was because Ukraine was trying to break away. Now, I know some of the scholars today try to reason this and reason that behind their little pencils and garbage like that and talk their way out of something. But the obvious fact is Ukraine is probably the most fertile area of the earth, and yet there was mass starvation going on during this time. It was not due to, the crop not being lacking. It was because Stalin took the crop to Russia because the crop in Russia was lacking, and he stole it from Ukraine, and he used this as a method to crush resistance to a breakaway nation that he wanted control of Ukraine. This is not something that belongs to Russia. Here in 1932-33, hungry children searching for food in the streets. Again, more starvation of children, and it was the most extreme time. But again, I have to emphasize, this is the most fertile area of Europe. It's actually one of the most fertile areas in the world for crop production. As a matter of fact, when you look at the Ukraine flag here, hands off Ukraine, the bottom portion of the flag actually is this wheat color or gold color, represents prosperity. I guess you could actually say it represents the element gold, but it also represents wheat, something that Ukraine has been noted for, high production of wheat and blue skies. So blue skies and high production of wheat. So for actually 10 million people to be starved to death was a deliberate policy by the Russians. That's not that long ago. And if you actually take into consideration everything that has happened since that time, I know it makes it sound like everything's a big plot from the West. There's a hell of a lot of stuff going on from Russia today that is actually taking major advantage of Ukrainian women. And if you dig into what is the country that in the organized crime units that are the biggest into the white slave trade and where they're coming from, the white slaves in the sex trade are coming from, they're coming from Eastern Europe and are being sold by Russian organized crime members. So it's going on left and right. A lot of it's actually going through Italy, but even the Italian mafia looks at these guys like they're pretty damn bad compared to even them. So anyway, just want to leave you with this thought because there's a lot of propaganda out there coming from Putin's people, and there's a lot of anti-Jewish propaganda coming out there that is actually coming out and to blame every single aspect of every single problem in the world on Jewish people specifically. When I see that type of stuff, I already know that person's going to put out 50 comments on the same subject of stuff I already know and already read. But the problem is they never read a balance. They only want to read what they want to read because actually I can actually blame something on any group of people there is in the world, and I can make a case for it if I study and focus in on only one thing. So a lot of times these people that are very anti-Semitic are have an axe to grind. But the thing is, with communism itself is its own element. It's got its own people that are in charge of it. It's like Stalin was somebody that is not Jewish, and he was pulling all the shots there. He was a brutal dictator. Vladimir Putin is not Jewish. He is a brutal dictator. It means, it does not mean he's a good guy because he's against the Western New World Order. Stalin was not a good guy. He's against the Western New World Order too. So was Khrushchev. Putin, no way, no way in hell. But just want to bring this out because a lot of people are not aware of this. I knew about it many years ago, but I read a lot before there was an internet around. So people like to present on the internet many times things that are quite skewed. Now, I know I'm taking this right from Wikipedia, but it gets in a lot more than this, and I'm not going to make this into a 3-hour video. It would only encompass a small percentage of what went on at this time. But what really happened, though, is that most of the American newspapers, especially the ones based in New York, ignored this famine, and it basically was started by Stalin, who wanted to break the backs of the Ukrainians that were trying to free themselves from the grip of the Soviet Union. So, it's a matter of, I know today they're trying to make things look like it never happened, and today a lot of people are trying to make things look like the Holocaust against the Jews never happened too. If there's even any argument as to the amount of number of Jews that were exterminated, they'll try to bring it down, and they'll bring it down to one stage, till they bring it down to nothing. And actually, that's the same type of game that's going on with what happened to the Ukraine in 1932 to 33. There was probably up to 10 million people that have died during this time, and it was all per policies of Stalin specifically, mainly, and the Bolsheviks. And the crop in Russia did very bad, so they stole it from Ukraine. That's what happened too. But there was also the thing: the Ukrainians wanted to get and assert independence against Stalin, and Russia wouldn't allow it. So it sounds like the same damn thing's going on today. The same damn thing's going on today, and it's not Putin's backyard. It's a separate and independent country. That's all there is to it.